Everybody enjoyed their week, and now we're going to begin. Just get that going. Okay, here we are. We got online. Susan, you can hear me? Okay. The roots of equality. We got a lot of good feedback from last week's class. So there was a teacher teaching the students, and she says, "Can you tell me who said, ask not what your country could do for you, ask what you could do for your country?" So in this particular class, everybody knows the answer. In that class, no one knew. None of the kids knew. So come on, does anybody know the answer? Come on, someone tell me the answer. Finally, there was a Japanese boy in the back, and he said, "The John F. Kennedy." The teacher starts berating the students. How come the only one that knows how to answer this is a Japanese student? You are all American grown. He's an immigrant who just came to the country, and he knows better than you guys. So one of the boys yells out, "The hell with the Japanese." So the teacher becomes angry and says, "Who said that?" He said, "Harry Truman, 1914. Anyway, so today is another lesson in America and America's founders. And we are on page 31 in your book. In case you're wondering why I'm so well rested, because there's no kids, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was busy sending off the roving rabbis to the airport, only to find out that their flight was canceled, and they're now on the way back from the airport. So they're going to New York. Anyway, so in our previous lesson, we looked broadly at how Jewish ideas shaped America. We saw many America's founders understood their work in the New World through the language and ideals of the Torah. In this lesson, we'll focus. One second. Hello. Monty, you have to Google it on middle of the class. Yes, I still have one. In this lesson, we're going to focus on one central American value and what it actually really means. And that is equality. And we're going to explain what is the proper way to define that. What are three? Well, I already mentioned one. What are three other fundamental American values, in your opinion, in order of importance? Pursuit of happiness? Freedom, okay. What else? Freedom of speech, okay. Freedom of religion? Okay. Free speech, okay, that was mentioned. God we trust. Yeah, we're going to talk about God we trust the next lesson. That's a good one. So today we're going to talk about the one which is equality, which is where's the Declaration of Independence? We don't have it this time. We had who had it? David, you had the Declaration of Independence last time? No. Yeah, so we're going to be focusing on that a little bit. So let's begin. In the mid-1770s, there was tension between the American colonies and Britain, and reached a boiling point. Following a series of British-imposed taxes in the colonies, there was no representation in Parliament, and they felt increasingly alienated, and frustration grew within the intolerable acts which was a series of 4 laws passed by the British Parliament in 1774. And there was to punish the Boston Tea Party, etc. And in 1776, it became clear that the reconciliation was no longer possible and we needed independence. So there was the Continental Congress. They decided to declare independence. They drafted a document which was put together by Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence the way we know it. It didn't only list the colony-specific grievances to Britain, but it laid the fundamental values that America cherished to frame the Declaration of Independence as a righteous act and the protection of a fundamental human rights, not just a rebellion seeking to be free on their own right, but this was a revolution which was about bringing about what they wanted their values to be as Americans. And this was, in their world, became known as the pursuit of liberty. And so let's take a look. Here you have in Congress, July 4th, 1776. And what does it say? Text number 1, page 31. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? Everybody in this room probably knows that by heart. Now, this basic fundamental value is based on one very significant principle. And that is what? That all men are created equal. So this is a foundational premise. And this is what we're going to devote our class today to look at. Because in the 21st century, this concept that all men are created equal seems to be a very basic concept. It seems to be accepted by all, unquestioned by anyone. It seems to be a basic fundamental principle. But if we take a look historically, that actually wasn't the case. It wasn't always a consensus in that way. It's actually something that's quite radical and quite disruptive. To appreciate how radical it is, we have to understand the world in which this concept was introduced, where there was a construction of a hierarchy as an inherent quality, and inherently there is inequality. We begin with ancient Greece, which is, if you want to say, the foundation of the so-called Western democracy or Western values. And that's where many of the ideas of the Western ideas, art, government, public life, come from. Greek thinkers who influenced that lasted, for centuries, for human beings, they saw them very differently than we do today. They saw a layer of status in the way human beings were. Plato, you've heard of him. He's one of the most influential thinkers in history. He taught that people were born different, distinct classes, and it's not an accident of where you were born into. He's not only that, but he saw it as a matter of divine intentional design this way. He looked at it as the myths of metals, which means that according to this mythological account, God who fashioned humanity believed that there has to be different levels of or tiers, if you will, of hierarchy. Take a look in text number 2 from Plato. All of you in the city are brothers, but the God who made you mixed some gold into those who are adequately equipped to rule, because they are most valuable. He put silver in those who are auxiliaries, and iron and copper in the farmers and other craftsmen. For the most part, you will produce children like yourselves, but because you are all related, a silver child will occasionally be born from a golden parent and vice versa. So to us, this sounds ridiculous, but the reality is that is the way human beings lived for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years. You take a look into the ancient world view, this was a component of a proper functioning state. According to this worldview, a person has intrinsic worth, and that is the way you are pretty much stuck, infused in your soul by creation. In other words, you didn't just see it that, sorry, this is the way it is because we decided it. No, this is the way God created you. There was the gold class, the iron class, and they didn't consider that oppressive or unfair. From their perspective, it was a definition of justice. And each part of the whole performing its proper function, the function of iron and copper souls was to labor and to obey those of the gold souls. And so this was not merely a social structure, it was a metaphysical claim about the fundamental nature of humanity. It was presented not as an artificial construct, but as a natural, correct, and just order of the universe. And so, when you see nature as hierarchical, take a look at the wild. You have the lion, that's the king of the jungle. And then you have those subordinates, and you have the lion who could attack those, and then you have others that attack others, and then all the way down to, the grass feeders or whatever. And so, if that's the way the world works in nature, human nature works that way as well. So it doesn't sound so crazy. If this is the way nature is constructed, then obviously this is the way humans are. And not only that, but let's take it a step further. Not only is nature constructed that way, but by them, their gods were constructed that way as well. You had gods that were more powerful. They were deemed higher. And then you had some gods that were less powerful. And so if the gods are created that way, the way they believed it in their pagan historical view, then obviously this is the way it should be by humans as well. Why should it be any different? And so, while we think of it as a very crazy way to think, obviously they didn't necessarily see it that way. Now, there are a number of implications when you have a social hierarchy. Number one, you have the abuse of the powerless. What does it mean, abuse of the powerless? That if I'm higher breed than you, then I could mistreat you. I am allowed to mistreat you. And shouldn't I understand that as a right to abuse you? If humans are greater than animals, and animals are greater than vegetation, and vegetation is greater than minerals, and so that's the way it works. It wasn't until long ago where you had slavery and people were beaten, imprisoned, and even killed, and that was the norm. Then you have, that's number one. Number two, you have inequality before the law, which is that not everyone has the same justice system. And by the way, this works both ways as well. Because number one, in general, you're always going to have that those that are of lower classes, they suffer greater punishment than those of equal crimes. But it could also be sometimes that if a judge feels bad for someone, then maybe someone of of a higher status may be looked at in a certain way as well, and may be challenged too. But the point is that the justice system is based on your status, your level. And number three, which is probably most important, is there's a lack of universal education. And when there's no education, when only the the word hieroglyphic means, they say in ancient Egypt, means language of the priests. So it was only those that were priests that were of a certain status who were allowed to educate themselves. No one else was allowed to educate themselves. So if you couldn't be educated, then obviously you would never change your perspective because you have no way to know any different. And this was the prevailing reality. So you had a world of gold, silver, copper, and there was justified abuse, unequal justice, ignorance by design, and this is the way it was. Any questions? No? Okay. So then we can continue on. Okay. Then came along the Torah's view on these matters. And that is, so when we go into the world of accepted hierarchy, the Torah offered one brief but powerful statement. I should say that a little bit of what we're going to talk about today, we have talked about in the previous course briefly as well, but we're going to take this in a different direction. So we're going to begin with the first chapter in Genesis, in the account of creation. Page 35, text number 3. Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oto, zachar nekeva bara otam. And God created the human in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So God created the human in his image. And also, by the way, male and female, he created them. A lot of people misunderstand this. Adam was originally created as both a male and female. And then when God, so to speak, created the female, it wasn't that God created a female. It's some people translate that God removed a rib and created the female. That's actually not what happened. What happened was God removed a side, which means sort of cut him in half, and because half was male and half was female. And that's what it means. Male and female, he created them. Anyway, what do we see over here? B'tzelem Elokim, in the image of God. The Torah doesn't say God created the kings in his image. It doesn't say that God created the priest or the warrior in his image. It says God created mankind in his image. This is a statement that is very, very unique. Because what are we saying? We're saying that it doesn't go by who you are or where you come from, but a human being in the singular representing all humanity is in his image. Which means that if every person was created in the image of God, everyone has this infinite being of God within them. The entire pyramid of the human value, that collapses. And now we have each and every person is gold, because gold, as we know, is priceless, and the divine template in each and every person. And so this idea of superiority now falls apart. No one can claim a higher order than anyone else, because everyone in humanity reflects the ultimate source of greatness. Text number 4 from the great Jonathan Sacks, who we've already quoted once before. A sentence was uttered that heralded the greatest paradigm shift in the story of mankind. So God made man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. The single proposition was an explosive, created him, thank you. The single proposition was an explosive charge at the base of the entire source of the ancient and medieval world. It took millennia for its potential to be realized, but once stated, the rest was inevitable. From it would flow the great ideas that changed the West, the sanctity of human life, the dignity of the individual human rights, the sovereignty of justice, the rule of law, and the idea of a free society. Nothing could have been more counterintuitive. That kings, rulers, emperors, pharaohs were in the image of God, that much the ancient world knew. But that we all are, that was revolutionary. Oh, I have another book. Just noticed you have one other book. So the ancient world was perfectly comfortable with the idea that a powerful ruler, a pharaoh or an emperor, was in the image or representative of God. But that everyone is created in the image of God, that is something that is unique. And as he points out, the conceptual seeds of Western civilizations, most cherished values, were sown by this single sentence. The idea emerges that human life is sacred, an individual possesses an inherently dignified being that human beings are. Now, there is a second point to this, and that is, if we all say that we're created equal, then are we just a bunch of robots that are all exactly the same? And this new paradigm of equality raises this profound philosophical question, which is a question of redundancy. So if we were all equal and stamped out of the same divine mold, then for all, so to speak, in the image of God, along with billions of others from the planet, then what is my purpose here? So does equality imply uniformity? And the Torah's answer is woven into the fabric of creation account that's no. And the reason for this, as we're going to see, is that this is why man is created as a single. Why man created, as we said, male and female as one individual, and then they became two, unlike everyone else that was created as two beings. God doesn't need to waste his time, so to speak, in creating unnecessary clones. No human being can just be an unpurposeful, just another image of God. There has to be something of why that individual or what that individual can fulfill. And this dual purpose of universal equality and value and absolute individual uniqueness is communicated to this specific defined decision of creating a human person, a human Adam. We're going to learn about that in a moment, but first I'll take questions. Yes.
In the second sentence, so God made man in his own image and created him. For the man and his
Yeah, it's a mistake. It should be created them.
alone the man. The God is female, lower and
No, again, Zachar unikeva, man, male and female, saying together. He created them.
they created that.
It's a mistranslation. It's a mistranslation. It's a mistranslation, I'm telling you. It's mistranslated. Should be created. Bara otam means created them. Yeah.
Maybe it's can be addressed later. What about the Kohanim and the Levites that are hierarchy structure?
Yes, so we're probably going to see that in the next part. I mean, we're not going to directly address that, but that should answer it. Okay. Any other questions? So let us take a look at text number 5. This is from the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. It says like this. Initially, only one human being was created. Number 1, this is to teach us that one who destroys a single life is considered to have destroyed the entire world. And one who saves a single life is considered to have saved the entire world. So that's number 1. Number 2, to maintain harmony among humanity, that one person would not be able to say to another, my progenitor is greater than yours. So that's number 2. Number 3, so that the heretic should not say that there are many gods, each creating his own line of humanity. And number 4, to communicate the greatness of God. For when a person mints many coins from the same mold, all the coins are alike. But God mints every person through the mold of the first human, and yet no two people are alike. Therefore, every person must say, the world was created for me. So, let's break this down a little bit. This passage provides 4 explanations why God chose to make the human being as a single entity. The second explanation, right? So the first one is pretty simple. One who saves one person as if they saved the entire world. The second one, what are we saying? This is directly confronting this hierarchical worldview of Plato and saying that no one could tell another that my progenitor is greater than yours. God created many different humans, and the idea that we all come from the same ancestor tells us that we all have the same rights, if you will. And by establishing a single universal ancestor for all human beings, we're saying that we are neutralizing this argument. Because we're saying that everyone comes from the same place. Doesn't matter if you're a king or you're a farmer, we all come from the same place. And as we have discussed, but what about the redundancy? So this is where we get to the second point as well. Or in a certain sense, going back to the first point, which is that every person is an entire world. What's the idea of saying an entire world? It means that every person is a standalone in creation. Every person has their own purpose and reason in creation. Every person has the entire world for which to save on. So it's not just, I'm saving a life. I'm just saving a physical life. I'm saving everything that person represents as a human being on this world. And the same is true with each of us. God does not create anything superfluous. That's why no one looks the same. Even though people always tell me that my kids look all the same. But they each have their independent look, their each size, their own style, their own personality, their own aspirations. Everyone is different. And isn't it incredible? You could have children coming from the same parents, and yet each one is so different. So if I was put on this purpose, on earth with this purpose, that only I could fulfill, and only I could do. And yes, it may come out in different agendas, in different ways. So, you asked about the Kohen or the Levi. It's not to say that the Kohen is greater than the Levi or than the Israelite, but that the Kohen has a certain job where they have to fulfill, and the Israelite has a certain job that they have to fulfill. And the same thing when it comes to men and women. Each one has their position, their idea, their purpose, which they are fulfilling in their personal way. So, while the second explanation highlights our sameness, we're also bringing out the idea of the individual uniqueness. And this is also brought out in the last reason offered in the Mishnah, to communicate the greatness of God. Because this brings out the whole idea of why God is creating the world. There's likely something more that's going on here. We're not just a bunch of humans that are just sort of surviving the nature, surviving the fittest, and whoever could make it through. But the fact that each one has a distinct physical feature is the individuality. At the same time, the idea that we're all created from the same Adam image means that there's also the idea of equality. So both equality and individuality both brought out in the same exact point. The fact that Adam was created as one. And this entire line what? And this entire idea now is brought about in this powerful conclusion in the Mishnah, which says, therefore, every person should say, the world was created for me. Right? That sounds a little arrogant. The world is created for me. It sounds like a dangerous statement. But actually, this is based on a social hierarchy. It's not based on a social hierarchy saying that I'm greater. On the contrary, this is a responsibility-based ideology of this statement. The world is created for me is a call to action. It's saying, therefore, I have to live up to what I have to live up to. I have to be who I was created to be. I can't say I'm going to rely on someone else. I can't say I'm going to rely on the kings and the priests to do it for me. No, every person has their responsibility. I can't make someone do it. I can't make someone be who they want to be because the world is created for me. It's interesting. I'm going to get to you in a second. It's interesting that we celebrate the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, which we know as the birthday of creation. We say in the prayers, Zeh Hayom Tchilat Ma'asecha. This is the day of the beginning of your creation. But actually, historically, the day of Rosh Hashanah is the day that the sixth day of creation when man was created. And so, if man was created on this day, on the day of Rosh Hashanah, it's sort of the birthday of the world, but more specifically, Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of humanity. And that's why we remember each day on Rosh Hashanah, the birthday of humanity, telling us that these 2 points, number one, which sort of sounds contradictory, but at the same time, they're actually both work they both work together very well. Number one, equality. We all have that equal opportunity. If we each put in our parts, we see another year coming, wake up to another year, and we see we all have equal opportunity. And at the same time, we have to see individuality. Each of us has our special thing that we could contribute. And so that's why Rosh Hashanah, which you celebrate, is on the day of the creation of man. Questions? Yes?
So equality is inherent, but humanity places the value on another's purpose. What I'm trying to understand is it was laid out in a way that equality was inherent
Right.
in the beginning, so to speak.
Right.
But then all of a sudden things changed and there was a value placed on another's purpose.
Right. So in other words, the very same idea has two seemingly contradictory outcomes. This idea that man was created as an individual has two contradictory outcomes. On one hand, man was created as an individual, and therefore all are equal because we all come from the same source. And at the same time, saying man was created as an individual, therefore every individual is important. So that's the way the Mishnah is teaching us to see this idea. Yeah.
So I remember reading this whole concept, the beginning of the animosity or Judaism, because they're wiping out all that status, saying everybody's the same. And the second thing, when the founders of the country got together and were God-fearing and unified, how was it that slavery really been abolished immediately? And it took so long.
Okay. So your second question we're going to get to soon. But I'll address your first question, which is actually a great point. Yeah, this does bother a lot of the outside world because they want to live in that hierarchical society. They want to know that no, not everyone is equal. They want to know that there are those that are greater than others. We should have control over others. And when Judaism is presenting an idea, which is a universal idea, right? Adam is the father of all humanity. It's a universal idea, and we're saying, it doesn't mean we don't believe that everyone has to be Jewish. We believe everyone is created in their way with their purpose, and wherever you are, wherever you were born, whatever type of background you grew up in, that's what your purpose is. And if you're if you grew up in Asia, you have a purpose of an Asian. If you grew up in Africa, you have a purpose of an African. If you grew up in South Africa, then there. If you grew up in Argentina, it's to win a World Cup. I mean, whatever. Yeah.
With single hierarchy that works very well with the military. Think of all the different ranks and each and every one. And it works well because the vision of slavery knows exactly in general what's expected of you, if you're a colonel, what's expected of you.
Right.
Together as all.
And if there's a someone from the office going out on the field, that wouldn't work out very well, right? You have to have the field soldier has to do their job, and the one in the office has to do their job. And if they get confused, then it probably wouldn't do what the battle wouldn't be won that way. But it's a different definition of hierarchy. It's not hierarchy that I am greater and therefore I have ability to control. The hierarchy means that each position has to help each other, right? What is greater, the head or the foot? Well, the answer is the head has a certain thing that's higher than the foot, but at the same time, the head can't get anywhere without the foot. So they're providing for each other.
But yeah.
Okay, that's a different discussion. Okay. Yeah, they have a greater responsibility.
It's within that function that there has to be somebody with a higher purpose, and they know what their purpose is, and they go with it. Now, you start out as a little person, and whatever you do for yourself, whatever you do in that line, you make yourself up there, but it's not that you are better. It's just that you have been trained and taught as your purpose. This is who you are. That's all. And it's just that that's the hierarchy.
Listen, there are a lot of people that get paid more than others, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the fact that they're getting paid more means that they're more valuable. I could give you a lot of examples. For example, a rabbi doesn't get paid very well. Okay. Anyway, Equal parts of the whole, exactly. Exactly. Like one body coming together. Okay. Um, as a lot of the people that the roving rabbis went to visit, and they said that a lot of people mentioned to them that they miss Chani. The Chani's away. And I said that this was one of the fundamental ideas, this teachings that the Rebbe taught us based on this Torah idea that when you talk about equality between men and women, that it doesn't mean that they're both doing the same thing and both acting in the same way, but the idea that each one is providing something that the other can, and each one, and the whole foundation of Judaism is based on this. Okay, let's continue on. We're on page 40. So this is actually a text that we did read in the previous course. Some of you may recognize this. Here's two examples how the Torah translates this high-minded concept into a practical implication. So first, the Torah teaches us that disgracing another human being is considered a grave offense. And there is a debate in the Mishnah. The debate is between Rabbi Akiva and Ben Azai. On page 40, text 6a. You shall love your fellow as yourself. Rabbi Akiva said this is a great principle in the Torah. By the way, we also begin our prayers every day by saying, I hereby accept upon myself the mitzvah, to love your fellow as yourself. We're supposed to start our prayers that way every day. Then, as I said, the following verse conveys an even greater principle, that this is the written account of the descendants of Adam. When God created Adam, in the likeness of God, he created him. So what Rabbi Akiva is saying, which is often considered the golden rule, is love your fellow as yourself. Yet his colleague says, no, there's actually something that's greater than that, which is that this is the account of the descendants of Adam. Now, what is the difference between the two? So as the Ravid explains, Rabbi Avram ben David, page 41, text P6b, from this verse we only learn, in other words, the one of love your fellow as yourself, we only learn to love another like yourself. Thus, a person who had been shamed, cursed, victimized by theft, or beaten might think that this is permissible to allow a fellow to be similarly shamed, cursed, or beaten. Therefore, the Torah says, in the likeness of God, he created him, as to say, who are you shaming, who are you cursing? The image of God. Thus, this verse is greater principle than the first. Right? So when you're saying love your fellow as yourself, what if I don't love myself? And unfortunately, that's the case in many cases where someone feels that they're going through a hard time, they've endured hardships, they've been abused, and unfortunately, I'll get to you soon. And unfortunately, it could play out that they also abuse others because of that.
Like an iceberg.
And yeah, and it's something that unfortunately you see quite common. Okay, well, I have to treat my fellow like myself. This is how I was treated. This is how my life is, and so therefore, we say no. That's not the way it goes. God created everyone, and everyone has their divine image. And God says when you're abusing, that's also abusing the divine image. And therefore also, you have to have equality before the law. Now, what does it mean, equality? So, justice could be absolutely blind, holding the powerful and the powerless in the exact same standard. This is justice. Right? Isn't there something about the Statue of Liberty being blind to justice? So, what does the Torah tell us in Leviticus? Do not pervert justice and not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great. Judge your neighbor fairly. Now, what the Torah is saying that when it's coming to favoritism, so we could say, yeah, of course, you shouldn't show favoritism to the higher ones. What if it works the other way around? What if the one that's poor is actually in the right? So, okay, I'm sorry. What if what if the one that's rich, I'm sorry, is actually in the right? So you say, this guy has millions of dollars. This guy's a poor man. Let him go and take a few dollars from him. Are we so mad that he broke into his house and he took a few dollars? The guy doesn't need it. The guy's a billionaire. Leave the poor guy alone. So the Torah says, no, perverting justice is on that way too. Perverting justice means that it goes all ways. You do not favor the rich, you do not favor the poor. You do not favor the strong or the weak. You have to find everyone equal. Justice means that everyone is created in the divine image. Everyone has their place, everyone has their purpose, and each one plays out in their own right. And this is, both ends, highlights the law of being created B'Tselem Elokim in the image of God. And so this is why Ben Azai says that in a certain way, love your fellow as yourself is limited in a certain way, and therefore he takes it even more so, and the likeness of the image of God is in a certain way even more powerful, that the rich and poor actually are equally the same. That I don't see one over the other in any circumstance. Yes. Question.
Oh, no, I was going to make a comment that a lot of people seem to forget that in the midst of loving your neighbor and the inherent mitzvah is that you've got to love your people. Right. Which inherently leads to individual dignity in the fact that if we are incapable of love, we cannot love our neighbor if we don't love ourselves, and if we don't love ourselves, it's because we have psychologically are denigrating ourselves, and that is antithetical to being created in the image of God. All right, very good. Yes.
So we're saying that everybody's created in the image of God. It's time to hear what Jews have a special soul or a different soul.
Jews have a unique purpose, a unique position of how they are to be serving the world, so to speak, similar to the idea of the Kohen or the Yisrael, where a Kohen has certain responsibilities that the Israelite does not. At the same time, the Israelite has certain responsibilities that the Kohen does not. And the same thing when it comes to Jewish people. Jewish people have certain responsibilities to be a light unto the nations, and it doesn't mean that we are, created any more important in any way, but that we have a responsibility that goes with that. And Jews are not. Our job is not to go on TV and show how we eat lox and bagels. There's a lot more to showing what it is to live in a godly way in the world, and so we have that responsibility. It doesn't mean better. On the contrary, it's actually more difficult. Can we go to? I want to continue on. Oh yes, and you did ask me to mention that we should point out that that a lot of the tools that we use were invented by many of the slaves in Africa. Is that what you want me to point out?
We created that the Africans have not been able to develop enough that they can do the things that we do. So inherently, are we considering ourselves in a superior manner to somebody who cannot elevate themselves?
So you're actually bringing out a beautiful example, which is that the Africans, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but the Africans are creating certain tools, and then you have others who are able to take it and make it even more useful. So we're actually helping out each other, which is beautiful. Okay, so now the question that comes about now is, so how does it actually how does this actually come about to be part of the Declaration of Independence? Because ultimately, yeah, these are all beautiful biblical ideas. These are beautiful Torah ideas. We quoted a Mishnah, but what does that have to do with the Declaration of Independence? How did it fall in there suddenly? So the answer is one man, and his name is John Locke. And we're now going to watch a video which is going to give a little background to this. One second. Why is it so low? Check the volume. It's interesting. Not getting it very loud. They're both at 100%. Okay, okay. Coming out of many Jewish concepts. One second. Sorry, I'm just going to try one thing. Um, okay. I really don't know. There should be a way to be able to see to share sounds, but I'm not sure where to find that.
No.
No, flick that, and maybe let's see where the volume is coming out of. Volume, speaker, the output we need.
It's not going out of here.
Yes.
Yes.
Later. It's off. Okay. No output.
It's not running through here.
Yeah. You give us 1 minute. Let's shut this is the slideshow. Shut the slideshow. We start it. We start that.
Still.
Do the slideshow from here. And
A little bit more sound. I think it still couldn't come out of this.
if it's on, well, we'll just
It's not.
okay. We'll do it as best as we can, and Okay, I know it's hard to hear, so we're going to read the text. By the way, for those who didn't hear, that individual that was in the video, his name is Yisrael Leiter. He is the current ambassador to the United States from Israel. So basically, what he said. Let's read text number 8. Yisrael Leiter. It's a text number 8. You'll see his name right there. It says Locke begins his second treatise discussion in the state of nature by declaring that humans are naturally in a state of equality, wherein all powers and jurisdiction is reciprocal, no one having more than another. What sort of equality is Locke advancing? It's an equality that rests on the theological or completely secular substructure. Equality for Locke is indeed inseparable from theology. Locke explains why equality is the natural state of humankind. For men, being all workmanship of one omnipotent and infinitely wise maker, all servants of one sovereign master, sent to the world by his order, and being furnished with like faculties, sharing all in the community of nature, there cannot be supposed or any such sort of nation among us that may authorize us to destroy one another, as if we were all made for one another's uses, as the inferior ranks of creatures are for ours. Locke's choice to establish this theory of innate human equality on the Hebrew Bible's account of creation is telling elective move insofar as he did not include any Christian scripture. In it, he found a human equality that is innate in his divine ordination, and hence fundamentally unconditional and unalterable. So basically what he's saying is that John Locke, who was basically the mastermind behind the Declaration of Independence, and where does all of his ideas come from? His ideas come from biblical sources. That is the point that he's getting to. If you take a look in your appendix, for those, it would be on page 52. Let's turn a few pages.
That was a surprise.
So you have John Locke, the two treaties of government, second treatise, chapter whatever. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but you could read through this, and the idea is that a lot of this is based on biblical sources. Okay. So anyway, you could read a little bit more. We don't have the time for this, but I just wanted to point out, if you want to read a little bit more about it, you could go there. So let's take a look now and continue on. So America, now, as some of you pointed out, to be historically honest, America didn't always live up to this in the best way possible. There have been centuries of slavery and a long dark shadow of racial discrimination. And for the first 150 plus years of American promise of fairness and justice for all, it didn't extend to the African slaves and their descendants. However, we should point out the flip side to that, which is that this idea itself was present from the very beginning, and the nation's founding documents was part of their political DNA. And so therefore, it was because of this where, when you go back to the Supreme Court formally ruling in 1857 that Black people were not citizens and had no constitutional rights, so and that Congress had no authority to institute a federal ban against slavery. So because it was part of the foundation of this country, therefore those who were against it in the northern states, they refused to accept this ruling. Ultimately, they were ready to go to a civil war over it. In other words, while of course it's horrible the way that they were treated then, at the same time, it's because of the foundations of this country that we had that we were able to get past that, if you will. And ultimately, the rise of Abraham Lincoln's anti-slavery Republican Party in 1861, and ultimately the war and the abolishment of slavery, the fairness and justice for all. So after the Union won the Civil War, they quickly moved to enshrine this principle of equality as the universal law. And that brought about the 13th Amendment, which banned slavery, text number 9. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, and property without due process of law, or deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. It's finally extended to all people. Of course, then it was still not perfect, but it took a couple of years. There was still lack of equality, if you will. And then, of course, you had the Civil Rights Act, which came a few years later. But eventually, we started figuring it out, if you will. But this also shows how radical the ideas were. Because the world was not, even this country, was not fully ready to accept it, even to understand it. So, as time goes on, it's still relatively a young country. It's only 250 years old. It's relatively young. Most countries have been around for hundreds of years, even thousands of years. And so it's still a work in progress. But when you have it enshrined in the Constitution, this is something that is really unique. And so this principle is true on American national level, it's true on a Jewish national level, and it's true also on a personal level. Any questions? Yes.
Point out that slavery did not start in the United States. It was going on for millennia. And we seem to forget that.
Right.
States, and
Right.
makes me wonder about going back to the beginning of Judaism, where people then who believe in God and simply the Bible continue to have slaves.
Right. So that's a great question. So I'll just answer you briefly. We have discussed this in some other courses. The idea. 1 second. The idea of slavery in the Torah is actually it's a response to what the society was demanding at the time. And actually, what the Torah does is the Torah says that you have to, if you take a slave, you're actually in a certain sense saving that individual, because what you're doing is you're bringing them into a healthy environment where in most other places they're completely mistreating them. You're actually, in a certain sense, making life better for them. If you take a look at, like, for Maimonides, the way he talks about treating slaves. He says you have to make sure that they eat before you eat. You have to make sure they have a better bed than you have. You have to make sure that they are taken care of. You have to make sure that their life is very good. He says that we have to learn from God, have compassion for all, and make sure that nobody is not treated properly. And so, while Torah, in a general sense, does not encourage slavery, but it does say that if you are in a society that slavery is existent, to try and make the best of that situation and to make sure that those who are in that way, you do find historically there were Jewish slaves, but you find historically a lot of uprisings of slaves, but you don't really find that amongst Jewish slave owners. As a matter of fact, a lot of them really, they were happy in those situations because they were treated very well. And second, I have a question for what? No, back there.
Let's not pretend that slavery in the United States was anything but brutal. That slavery in the United States was nothing. Slavery in the United States was not like slavery anywhere else. Okay? And when the slave trade was abolished, they put in places to be read like windows. So don't try and say anything like, oh, well, everybody's not like here. It was brutal. When people were slaves in Egypt, they came out knowing who you were. You came out knowing which tribe you belonged to. You were living by yourself and had your own language. In this country, you were immortalized, demoralized, dehumanized. You got rid of who the person, where they came, and their language. My great-grandmother's grand didn't know where she came from because she had been bought at an auction as a child. Don't tell me they did that in Egypt. Don't tell me they did it anywhere else. So let's not pretend that what was here was like where else. Let's not pretend that we were not on slave ships, chained down, head to foot, in our excrement. Don't tell me anywhere else was like that. So I'm trying to be quiet, and I was quiet for somebody stepped in the truth. Now,
Thank you. Okay, wait 1 second. Yes. Shirley, you had a question?
After a certain number of years were free, and then they were given the option whether they wanted to stay or they actually go in these ministries in 7 years.
Yes, they wanted to continue slavery. You're right.
See if you get the certificates in the year some.
Yeah, yes, and it's you know even once they left Egypt, how many times did the Jews say, "Let's go back to Egypt"? Right. So it's also a mindset that you have to overcome. Wait, Rita first. Do you have a question?
No, the thing I would say was that we have to be so mindful that the people felt their rights came from the government, from everybody's government and everything. You know, this was our constitutions, ours,
Right.
to believe that our God is above all of us and has given all of that right. And we have to fight for it sometimes.
Absolutely. Yes, Monica.
slavery in America was extremely tied with the economy. Anytime you introduce money, people get stepped on. And that's what happened with the slavery in America. It's so bad, frankly, that if you look at the roles of slaves that were owned by slave owners, they had no names. Now your name identifies you. But
Right.
these people were just items. And so, and that's why the South specifically needed them for what? The economy, their economy. The
Right.
North was industrial boys, let's say, not so much. The South, big time.
Right.
Each time you introduce money, it's a bad situation.
Okay, one more question. Yes.
But it's stated.
What's it?
Your your speech is very impassioned and heartfelt. The name of the course is Sinai and Civis.
Right.
And it predates what. No, wait,
I don't.
and what Waverly is talking about is very serious and very insightful and very meaningful. But it's ethically, even back in biblical times, we were very ethical
Right.
in that the fact that we only owned slaves for 7 years. And as you said, biblically, we were commanded to treat them better
Right.
than
Right.
others.
100%.
And that was the point of what we learned then.
Right. I don't.
The only resting for the slaves there.
Right.
We chose.
Okay. Okay, and Waverlin, I don't think that she meant to attack anyone. She was simply saying that the idea of slavery existed before the United States, and that was all she was trying to point out. But on the contrary, the whole point over here is that we have to appreciate the country that we have, because we have to cherish the ideals of what this country is founded on, and sometimes we forget about that. We get too used to the comfortability that we live in, and we forget that where a lot of people come from has been a lot worse. And what we're trying to get to is part of that is with the very founding of this country, and the very founding of this country is based on biblical ideas that all men are created equal. So I want to just end off with this idea that number one, we talked about the divine image, and that is living with the appreciation that we're all created in the divine image. And this idea of American value of equality is based on the Declaration of Independence, which spells out very clearly our creation from God. And often people talk about this equality without acknowledging the inherently Jewish religious soul within it. And when we cut off the soul, sometimes when you cut off the roots, then sometimes the flowers wither away very quickly. So let's remember where this comes from. Second of all, we have to respect human individuality. We share a common origin, but we also have to remember that we each have our obligation in creation to transform this place into a godly place, into the divine home. We each have our part in that. Each individual has their mission, a Jew, a non-Jew, any background that you have, each one has their specific pathway of how to serve God. For a Jew, it's through Torah and mitzvahs. For others, it's through living a peaceful life, a just life, the 7 Noahide laws, which we talk about, and on an individual level as well. No two human beings are exactly the same. Their skills, talents, abilities, and life circumstances, everybody is different. And this is all part of the cosmic tapestry that all weaves together our talents and abilities to deploy them in the fullest way. And therefore, there is a responsibility. So sometimes when we follow Locke's ways, we could say, okay, we all have our rights. And rights is an American term, but a biblical term, which is a more poignant term, is responsibility. Because yes, we have rights, but the rights tells me I could do whatever I want. I have the right to do whatever I want. No one can stop me. Responsibility means, while I have the right to do what I want, I also have a responsibility to make sure that plays out in the right way. And so it's not just a privilege, but it is, but as a responsibility. Text number 10. As God clothes the naked, is written, and God made garments of a skin for Adam and his wife, he clothed them. So shall you dress the naked. As God visited the ill, as is written, and God appeared to Abraham in the prime plains of Mamre when he was sick, so shall you visit the sick. And God comforted the mourners, as written, and it was after the passing of Abraham, and God blessed his son Isaac. So shall you comfort the mourners. As God buried the dead, as written, and God buried Moses in the valley, so shall you bury the dead. So what are we saying? You're created in the divine image of God. Yeah. So now learn from the ways of God. We have to learn how to act as well. How to act to our fellow, to our humans. As the Mishnah taught, every person must say, the world was created for me. I am needed. Every action matters. Every contribution that I have matters. And this also translated to a responsibility that we have to exercise our right to participate in the democratic process of elections. We shouldn't tell ourselves that there's millions of others. What does it matter? We have a voice. We should use our voice, by the way. It's another important lesson. I think I just got my ballot in the mail. Now that we mentioned that. We could influence how the direction of this country goes. We're given that right. We shouldn't say it's all over, it's lost. No, everyone has a voice, everyone has a vote. Maimonides, let's finish with this very important and powerful message. Maimonides says, text number 11, we should always consider ourselves and the entire world as equally balanced between merit and guilt. If we perform one transgression, we may tip our personal balance and that of the entire world to the side of guilt and bring destruction upon everyone. Conversely, if we perform one mitzvah, we may tip our balance and that of the entire world to the side of merit, bringing deliverance and salvation to all. This dynamic is reflected in the verse, a righteous person is the foundation of the world, meaning that a person who acts righteously tips the balance of the entire world and saves it. Think about that, how powerful this message is. Every single action that we do is not only affecting us and our personal lives, but it's affecting the entire world. And it could go either way, for a good action or the opposite. And every single thing that we do, think before, how can this change not only myself, but the entire world for the better? So let's go over the key points. And next week we're going to talk about in God we trust.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yes, 2 weeks. Thank you. Again, the volume's not really working, but you'll see on the screen. We will get the sound fixed for the next class. So I'm pressing pause for a minute. For those who were not able to hear the other video, as well as this one. So first of all, the text of this video is in your book on page 48. And also on the bottom, you see there's a little red icon there on the bottom of the page on the bottom right side. It says myjli.com/SAC. So you go there and you can watch all the videos that we're showing. You can watch them there. So if you missed it today, you want to see the video about John Locke, you can go back and watch that there. All right, that'll do it for today. Thank you everyone for joining us for a wonderful class.